Pokemon designs are one of the most important factors of the Pokemon series because they ultimately determine whether we love a certain Pokemon or hate it, which can make or break your experience with a game. Pokemon also come in a bunch of different types, which affect their designs as well, and in this video I'm going to be ranking the designs of every Pokemon type from worst to best. This is all just based on my own opinion and personal preference, so you're gonna have to let me know yours in the comments, and with that said, let's get started. Okay, so as mentioned, we're gonna be starting off at the worst end of things, and the type that has the worst designed Pokemon, in my opinion, is Bug. Now, for full disclosure, I don't think that any of the types are badly designed overall. They're all kind of a mix of good and bad, and what I found by looking over them all is that each type has great Pokemon, average Pokemon, and bad Pokemon, and it kind of came down to the balance of those three categories that determined each type's rank. For Bug in particular, I found that it just doesn't have enough heavy hitters in the design department for me to be able to rank it above the other types. This might not be super surprising, as Bug has always kind of been the forgotten child of Pokemon types, and while we often talk about the Bug type being a weak type in this regard, the designs of the Bug types aren't much different in my opinion. There are some that stand out, like Scizor and Heracross, but unfortunately, just not enough. Next up above Bug is Poison, and honestly, it's for basically the exact same reasons. Bug and Poison have always kind of been on the weaker side of the Pokemon type spectrum, and unfortunately, I have to say that that also extends to their Pokemon designs as well. There are great poison types like Gengar, Salandit, and even some newer ones like Clodsire and Pecharunt, but so many of them, in my opinion anyway, are also just average to below average Pokemon that I wouldn't ever really consider using on my team, especially compared to the other types. Coming up next is the first surprise of this video, and that is the Psychic type. I genuinely did not expect Psychic to be so low on my list, because Psychic is usually seen as a pretty cool type, thanks to Mewtwo and a lot of other legendaries being the Psychic type. But as I was looking at all of the Psychic types as a whole, I was kinda surprised by how many of the normal, non-legendary Psychic types I just wasn't feeling as much. They're by no means bad, and there are some good non-legendary ones like Metagross and Gallade, but I was also getting the impression as I was looking at them that Psychic kinda has some crazier designs, which I guess is just because of the nature of the Psychic type, and I guess that's just where my personal preference kicked in, because I just don't think I'm as much of a fan of some of those crazier designs. Which makes it rather fitting that the normal type is the next type on my list. When it comes to Pokemon designs, the normal type's biggest weakness in my opinion is also its biggest strength, and that is that it's normal. As the vanilla type in Pokemon, normal types don't ever really do anything to stand out too much, and so there's not a ton that really grab your attention. However, they also don't really do anything to offend or disgust you either, and the final result of that ends up being a group of really solid looking Pokemon that are just that, solid. Not bad at all, but also limited by their very nature to the point where they can't really stand out too much either. As we continue to move through this list, it only gets harder to choose which types have better designs, but an even crazier choice is being presented to you by today's sponsor, Ridge Wallet. Ridge is currently hosting a giveaway where you could potentially have your choice between some insane prizes. A Hennessy Velociraptor, a gold-plated Tesla Cybertruck, or $100,000 cash. And you can enter the giveaway for free. Additionally, for every dollar you spend on the Ridge website between now and September 13th, you'll get an entry as well. And there's even stuff on the site that'll get you extra entries, like the special new Hennessy and cyber-themed wallets that will get you 4 times the entries. On top of that, these are just amazing wallets anyway. I've been using one every day myself for around 5 years, and it's literally the best wallet that I have ever used, and I would never use a normal wallet again. So regardless of the giveaway, these wallets are great to get, and they even have key cases that can do the same thing for your keys as well. But then you've also got a chance to win either $100,000, a Cybertruck, or a Hennessy Velociraptor just for picking up one of these. So yeah, now is definitely the time to grab something. You can do so at ridge.com/hoops with the link in the description, and you can also go there to get your free entries in as well if you would like to do so. So again, check that out with the link in the description, and a big thank you to Ridge for supporting the channel. I've got another surprise for you next, and this one was an even bigger surprise to me than the Psychic type was, because next up I have got a tie between Dark and Fairy. I was certain that Dark would have been one of my higher ranked types, so I was a bit shocked when I was putting together my list and saw other types continually knocking it down. It does have some great Pokemon to its name, like Umbreon, Tyranitar, Houndoom, Zoroark, and the list just goes on, but I guess I felt like it didn't have as many as the other types, and then it also has some mons that I just don't really care about as much either, like Liepard, Skuntank, and Mandibuzz. As far as the tie with the Fairy type goes though, I felt like it was extremely fitting because I genuinely just couldn't decide which one I liked more, but honestly, Dark and Fairy are already like two sides of the same coin, so it's only right that they would be tied here. Fairy is basically just like a light version of the Dark type, and vice versa, and to me that made their Pokemon feel very similar. There's once again some great ones like Sylveon, Xerneas, and Alolan Ninetales, but also stuff that I don't like Zacian and Aromatisse. I definitely thought that both of these would be a bit higher though, so I'm probably just as surprised as you are. Climbing up above Dark and Fairy is the Rock type, and this is the first type that to me starts to feel really good. I feel like maybe Rock types just match my vibe a little more, but the great Pokemon that it has are truly great, like Tyranitar, Aggron, Rhydon, Tyrantrum, Colossal, and yes, Colossal is great. I know no one else thinks so, but I do. There are definitely some rock types that I don't like as much too, like Barbaracle or the Knackley line, but as a whole, I really like rock types, so they get a solid middle of the pack ranking. Beating rock types on my list is a type that also beats it in battle, and that's Fighting. When looking at the roster of fighting types, this is kinda where I felt that balance of great mons, average mons, and bad mons start to shift a little bit, and the number of bad ones, in my opinion, started to dwindle. Granted, I will never have a good thing to say about Girder, but a lot of the Pokemon here feel like they're on the above average side of things to me. And then when you start talking about the greats, you've got Pokemon like Lucario, Blaziken, Infernape, Hitmontop, Breloom, Annihilape, Koraidon, and a whole host of others. Fighting definitely isn't what I consider to be one of my favorite types, but it is a type that I definitely enjoy. Making its way into the top 10, this next one might be a little bit of a surprise as well, based on how high it is rather than how low, and that would be the Flying type. I say this because Flying kinda feels similar to normal in being a bit of a vanilla type, because Flying a lot of the time just means birds. Flying was also exclusively a secondary type for a long time before Generation 5 introduced the first primary flying type and the first mono flying type Pokemon in Tornadus, and then from there, it slowly but surely started to do its own thing, but not until Gen freaking 5. Regardless of whether you see it as just a secondary type or not though, the flying type feels, again, like an upgraded version of the normal type, where there aren't really any super terrible flying types for the most part, but then it also has the advantage of having some amazing Pokemon too, like Charizard, Gyarados, Dragonite, Crobat, Skarmory, Ho-Oh, Lugia, and that is literally just in the first 2 generations. It might benefit a lot from other types, but regardless, most flying types definitely pass the vibe check, so it gets a solid ranking from me. A little further up the ladder at number 9 is the Steel type, and this was actually a little bit lower than I expected Steel to be. With great Pokemon to its name like Steelix, Aggron, Jirachi, Lucario, Metagross, and Solgaleo, Steel definitely brings it in the design department. However, this is where personal taste started to creep in even more, as past this point is where we're really gonna start to get into some of my personal favorite types. And let's be honest, with a Pokemon like Kling Klang to your name, you can only get so far. Next up at number 8 is the Water type, and despite my previous statement, Water isn't actually one of my favorite types. However, it still gets this high because it has the honor of being one of the 3 starter types, which is a ginormous advantage compared to other types because having the starter Pokemon to your name means that for the most part, you have got heavy hitter after heavy hitter after heavy hitter before we even get to talking about regular Pokemon, of which there are a lot of great ones that are water type, like Lapras, Wooper, Milotic, Lantern, and Ludicolo. Add to that the cast of water-type legendaries like Kyogre and Suicune, and you have got yourself a true juggernaut of a Pokemon type. If number 8 on this list is a juggernaut though, that means that it's going to be an absolute dogfight for the next 7 spots. And at number 7, I have Electric. This is the point where we are really going to be getting into some of my personal favorite types, because when I look at Electric, I just see so many top tier Pokemon, like Yamper, Mareep, Raikou, Luxray, Rotom, Zekrom, Vikavolt, Miraidon, like there's honestly just so many good ones. I also just love the vibe of the Electric type too, and while that is a personal thing where you just love the flair of the type or the Pokemon, that's why this is a personal list. The only Electric types that I feel like I can say I genuinely don't really like are Thundurus, Dracozolt, and Stunfisk, although Stunfisk is so deliberately stupid that it's kind of growing on me, even though I kinda hate to say that. Otherwise though, Electric types are pretty cool, but not quite as cool, literally, as the number 6 spot, which is Ice. Now, I've said for a while that Ice is my personal favorite type, and while there has been a little movement in that regard for me recently, which I'll get into later, Ice is still one of my top 2 favorite types. Again, like Electric, the vibes of Ice types are something that I really love, but it also has some incredible Pokemon to its name as well. Alolan Sandshrew, Alolan Vulpix and Ninetales, Articuno, Sneasel and Weavile, the round perfection that is Spheal, Kyurem, Amara, Glaceon, and my personal favorite, Frigibax. This guy is literally my second favorite Pokemon ever, and a big part of that is the Ice typing. So yeah, the Ice type is great, and for the record, it deserves a few buffs and should definitely not be as weak as it is, so Game Freak, if you could get on that, that would be great. We are now officially into the top 5, and kicking us off with the best of the best is Grass. Now, personally, I like Ice as a type way better than Grass, so Grass being this high is a bit of a surprise, but let me tell you why it got so high. First off, like Water, it is a starter type, so it has all of the Grass type starters to its name. Second, it does not miss with its regular Pokemon like a lot of other types have done to this point. Phantump, Pumpkaboo, the Applin family, Ludicolo, Roserade, there are so many great ones. So the overall quality for its roster really shines through with the grass type as well. And then you also have a couple of amazing legendaries and mythicals like Ogerpon and Celebi, so overall, grass is a top tier type in the design department. At number 4 is another surprise type, because you would probably not expect a type like this to make it this far, and that is Ground. Ground is not a special type by any means, it's not a starter type like Grass, it's not an edgy or cool type like Psychic or Dark, so it doesn't have a lot of curb appeal, you could say, but it does have a metric ton of cool Pokemon that you really don't think about because you probably don't think of Ground as that good, but it has got both of the Neo families, Cubone and Marowak, Phanpy and Donphan, Flygon, Garchomp, Groudon, multiple starter Pokemon like Torterra and Swampert, Crocodile, Zygarde, and Ursaluna, just to name a couple. And frankly, I was not expecting this many A-list Pokemon out of a type that wasn't one of the more special types like the ones I mentioned before, and so I honestly didn't really have a choice but to rank it this high. Like the rock type, you could also say that this is a bit of a vibe thing as well, and the ground type just fits me a little more personally, but more than anything, there are just a ton of really cool ground type Pokemon. Now we come to the top 3, and at number 3, I have Ghost. Ghost is the type that I was alluding to before when I mentioned that the Ice type had some competition as my favorite type, because recently the Ghost type has really been winning me over. It's obviously one of the most unique types, and personally I feel like adding the Ghost type to anything just makes it infinitely more interesting and cool. All you need to do to understand that is look at the regional variants that have become the Ghost type in recent years. Marowak, Corsola, Zorua, and Zoroark, even an evolution like Annihilape, all became infinitely cooler because of the simple addition of the Ghost type. And then on top of that, there are so many standard Ghost types that are unbelievably interesting and cool, like Gengar, Phantump, Ceruledge, Aegislash, Drifloon, Chandelure, and even a couple legendaries like Giratina and Pecharunt. The Ghost type is just cool as heck, and I honestly feel kinda bad for only ranking it number 3. In the runner-up spot at number 2, we have a type that really isn't playing fair at all, and that is Dragon. It's pretty easy to see how a type called Dragon is going to do well in a design ranking situation, and truthfully, centering the type around one of the coolest fictional creatures ever practically lets it cheat when it comes to the designs of its Pokemon. You've got basically all of the pseudo-legendaries, most of which are S tier. You've got a ton of legendaries, most of which are also right around S tier, and then the normal Pokemon of this type consist of Pokemon like Haxorus, Noivern, and Tyrantrum. Like, how can you even compete with that? The truth is, you can't, but there is one more type that personally eclipses Dragon in the design department, and you've probably already figured it out by now, but it is the Fire type. Now, I like Fire as a type and figured it would be up there on my list, but I did not expect it to be number 1. Truthfully though, in my opinion, it has everything that made all of the other types good, all rolled up into one. First off, it's a starter type, headlined by my boy. Second, it's got some excellent legendaries and mythicals to its name, including Entei, Ho-Oh, Reshiram, Victini, and Volcanion. And third, its standard Pokemon complete the trifecta with some exceptional designs, like Arcanine, Houndoom, Talonflame, Pyroar, Ceruledge, Salandit, Colossal, again, don't talk to me about it, he's great, and a bunch of others. It even passes the vibe check, as fire types are as fiery in their personality as they are in their type, and that just makes them all the cooler. So as it stands right now, I would say that Fire has the best Pokemon designs of any type. But what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts and your own rankings in the comments, like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you haven't already for more. You can also check me out on Patreon if you would like to further support the channel and get some awesome exclusive benefits in return. And you can also check out my Pokemon remixes on Spotify or wherever you get your music to support as well, which is super appreciated. With that said, thank you guys so much for watching, and until the next one, as always, I will smell you guys later.